President Trump might not be on the ballot this November, but he's frequently urged Republican voters to act like he is.
5 weeks from today, all of this extraordinary progress is at stake. It is at stake. I'm not on the ballot, but in a certain way, I'm on the ballot, so please go out and vote. And they say if I was on the ticket, everybody would go, it would be a landslide. Even the fakers back there, they say that. And I'm not on the ticket, but I am on the ticket, because this is also a referendum about me and the disgusting gridlock that they'll put this country through.
While the president has at times tried to make the midterms about him, not all Republicans want it to be that way. And Democrats are also divided over how much to talk about Mr. Trump in their messages to voters. One issue that's central to campaigns on both sides of the aisle is entitlement reform. Democrats are warning voters that Republicans will make drastic cuts to government benefit programs like Medicare and Social Security, while Republicans, including the president, have slammed the Democrats' approach to the issue.
Also at stake in this election is Medicare. Democrats have signed up for a socialist takeover of American health care that would utterly destroy Medicare and rob our seniors of the benefits they paid into their entire lives. Republicans want to protect Medicare for our great seniors who have earned it and they've paid for it.
Joining me now are CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns, CBS News political contributor and Republican strategist Leslie Sanchez, and Democratic strategist, former Senate leadership aide, and current vice president with MWWPR, Joel Payne. All right, welcome to you all. Leslie, let me start with you. Why are the president and Republicans making this issue of entitlements a prominent issue right now?
Well, especially post the entire Kavanaugh Supreme Court issue that galvanized the Republican base, they're really looking for something solid to carry Republicans over the line. The president knows, just like any other kind of political calculation, that they expect his party to lose seats, especially in the House. And this is one of those areas that conservatives really respond to, especially now that he's laying all these potential threats with a Democratic takeover. The question is, will it work this late in the game?
Well, Joel, is this a signal of legislative priorities for Democrats if they retake control of the House?
Well, I think Democrats have been clear about their priorities, which are fighting to protect the Affordable Care Act and those provisions that people really care about, and pushing back on some of the Trump tax reforms, right? I think actually the strategy here that you're seeing from the president, from the White House, is they're trying to activate particularly older voters, because I actually think that those are the voters that they feel like are fungible here in this period while we're trying to activate people around the midterms. And I think the president's team feels like that is the group where they can have the most impact. I think it's a bad play. I don't think they're going to be successful with it, but I think that's the strategy behind it. Obviously, we'll see in a matter of 18, 19 days if it's effective, but I wouldn't count that out as a part of the strategy calculus here.
Caitlin, what about the president talking about this election being a referendum on him? I mean, is that essentially an area that he thinks can actually help the Republican Party at this point?
Right. Well, he is right that midterms are typically a referendum on the party in power, and he is the head of the Republican Party. What he's trying to do is activate those voters who showed up in 2016 for him, who didn't necessarily vote Republican in the past, or who even voted for Democrats in past elections. So he is concerned that voters who turned out in 2016 won't be that enthused to turn out down the ballot for other Republicans. And, you know, he spent most of the 2016 election railing against the Republican Party. So he's trying to activate those voters. Now, if you are running for a Senate seat against a Democratic incumbent in a place where Trump is really popular and where he won, you're going to love that message. And you're seeing Republican candidates attach themselves to the president. But if you're running as a Republican in districts in New Jersey or Southern California, South Florida, or other kind of swing districts across the country, suburbs of Chicago, for example, you're not going to want the president to make this election about him, because those are candidates, Republicans, who are trying to carve out their own identities, separate brands from the president. And And we're seeing in polling that they're not really having that much of success doing so far. So we'll see kind of how that pans out in the midterm.
Yeah, Leslie, what about that? Is this notion of the president getting out there and saying this is all about him not necessarily a one strategy fits all for Republican candidates?
You know, what's fascinating about this, especially since you have to look at it in the context a little bit longer, even beyond 2016, the president recognizes that with this populist movement that is very much engaged on the issues of health care, on the issues of religious freedom, and the president is delivering particularly on the issues of putting conservative judges and getting them confirmed, 84 of them confirmed, and he feels he has a very strong record to run on that both conservatives and then economic conservatives with tax reform will be excited about. And because of that, he's trying to say and do something that's not conventional, which is not unusual with President Trump. Normally, you would see a loss of 30-plus seats. The president's trying to keep that margin very small, very slim, to avoid what would happen if you did have a massive Democratic wave. And he's activating on those very sensitive issues. It's a different type of approach because in most cases, Elaine, just remember what Caitlin said, the president would be very quiet. He'd allow them to run their own campaigns. He's nationalizing this, and we're going to see just how effective that can be.
Yeah, so then, Joel, that brings us to the Democrats. Are they divided over how much they should mention the president, and what is their strategy with less than 3 weeks until the midterms?
Well, it's interesting. I think there are probably a lot of Democrats who want to make this a referendum on Donald Trump because they feel like Donald Trump is the best irritant, the best catalyst for Democratic voter turnout. But then many other Democrats would like to focus on those kitchen table issues, things like I mentioned before, health care, tax reform, some of the Democratic priority issues that are going to be prominent in 2019 and 2020 if Democrats are in control of Congress. I think there's another wing of the party, however, that would like to talk about impeaching Donald Trump. They'd like to talk about investigating Brett Kavanaugh, things like that. That is a real fight within the party right now. I actually think it's good that there are many different ideas. Normally you'd say, oh, it's a bad thing that Democrats don't have one focus. I think it's good. I think Democrats need a variety of different tools in the toolkit to activate voters, especially when you're where the Democratic Party is, where we've been out of power for so long. You just want whatever you can do to get your voters and to get your base activated. I think that's the strategy Democrats are trying to employ.
So, Caitlin, in an interview with the Associated Press earlier this week, President Trump said that he would not be responsible if Republicans lose control of the House. What do you make of that? Is that just part of the traditional lowering of expectations that can happen right before an election?
Well, it's interesting to contrast that with the clip that we played from the rally, because it seems like he's trying to have it both ways here, saying, I am on the ballot, this election is about me, but if Republicans don't win, it's not my fault, it's their fault. Or sometimes he said to rallies, you know, this will be your fault if Republicans don't win in the election. So he's trying to have it both ways here. But this really is a tale of two elections. You have the Senate map, which I was talking about with those Republican candidates and House candidates. And I was talking to a Republican strategist earlier today about kind of the effect that Trump is having in some of these districts. And it's very difficult to separate out from him. And that voters here are, you know, traditionally in these suburban swing districts would traditionally kind of separate the president away from the party. And this year, they don't appear at this point in focus groups and polling to be doing so. And they're very much wanting to send a message to the president himself. And if Democrats are successful, they want that message to be against the president.
Interesting. Well, in an interview with CBS This Morning co-host Norah O'Donnell, former Vice President Joe Biden discussed the role his age might play in a potential presidential run. Here's some of what he said.
Is age a legitimate issue?
It is a legitimate issue. Sure it is. And I think people are going to judge it. If I were to run, I think they're going to judge me on my vitality. Can I still run up the steps of Air Force Two? Am I still in good shape? Do I have all my faculties? Am I energetic? I think it's totally legitimate for people to ask those questions.
President Trump says that you're his dream candidate. It would be his dream to run against you.
Well, I tell you what. Well, I shouldn't say anything.
Please, we've got the cameras rolling.
No. Age has given me some wisdom.
Okay, Joel, what do you make of the former vice president's use of the word vitality in discussing what voters should consider?
You gotta love Vice President Biden. Listen, look, here's what I take from that. Number one, I think it's interesting that age has become such a talking point on the Democratic side. I mean, when you consider the fact that Donald Trump and Joe Biden could have gone to high school together, they're the same age. So I think that's a bit of a misnomer out there that Democrats are so out of step with the mainstream. I mean, the current president is 72, Joe Biden is 74, 75. So I kind of think that might mollify the issue a bit there. When he's talking about vitality, I think he's talking about energy and ability to whip up the base, which you have two different camps now in the Democratic Party, right? You've got the Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, kind of the older crowd, 65 and above, who are here as potential candidates. Then you've got the Cory Bookers, the Kamala Harrises of the world, the Kristen Gillibrands, who are a little bit younger. It'll be interesting to see where Democratic voters gravitate to, but I definitely think that's going to be a pain point and something to watch as we proceed into 2019 and we start looking towards who are going to be the top 2020 contenders for the Democrats. But again, I think it's just interesting for everybody to take a step back and remember Joe Biden and Donald Trump could go to high school together. They're the same age, essentially.
Okay, and on that note, Caitlin Huey-Burns, Leslie Sanchez, and Joel Payne, you are all pictures of vitality in my book. Thank you.
Thanks.